People say, why didn't you just leave, like it's some simple decision? Here's the truth. Leaving is a privilege. Not everybody has it. Safety, money, support, mental clarity, those are luxuries, not givens. So before you start to judge someone who stayed, maybe ask what it actually costs to leave. If you've ever felt ashamed for staying too long, this one's for you. I'm Lisa Sunny. I'm an expert on toxic and abusive relationships, and I specialize in trauma bonds. I talk about leaving a lot, about getting out, breaking free, rebuilding. You know what I don't talk about very often? Staying. So if this is something that kind of resonates, if you're here and this is the kind of real talk that you want more of, hit subscribe. We live in this world that just kind of glorifies walk away, right? Just end it, just leave, as if it's always that simple. As if it just comes down to courage or self-worth alone. But the idea that people stay in abuse just because they're weak, it's just wrong. It's dangerous. So let's get something straight. The ability to leave an abusive relationship really often just hinges on factors that have absolutely nothing to do with strength, intelligence, or willpower. It hinges on privilege. The people who ask, why didn't she just leave? Those are people who had options, people who had some support, access to safety. What if you didn't, right? Leaving might take a working car. Maybe it takes a friend that'll let you crash on their couch, it takes a savings account that you can access, a phone that he doesn't monitor. And even if you had all that, that's not just luck, that's privilege. Most survivors don't have that. So let's walk through what it actually takes to leave, not in theory, in reality, right? Financial stability. Can you afford to leave? Do you have a job? A bank account that he can't touch? Can you afford first and last month's rent, groceries, childcare, transportation? Because a lot of women can't. 99% of female survivors of domestic violence, which I just want to clearly state includes emotional abuse, not just physical, have been financially abused. 99%. Their abuser controlled the money, had everything in his name, tanked her credit, prevented her from working, took her paychecks, just to name a few ways. And here's the truth that most people just aren't saying out loud. Financial control is the number one reason that women stay trapped. It's not fear of being alone. It's not lack of love. It's survival. If he's holding the bank cards, the car keys, and the passwords, and you've got nothing but like a couple of bucks, leaving is a fantasy, not a plan. My story, I was broke. We had 2 kids and a car that he had damaged in a fit of rage. The windshield was cracked because he kicked it in. The seats were broken. The clock was broken. I had $0. He'd nearly bankrupted us. And I was the breadwinner the entire time. And he tanked everything into his dream business, which obviously failed. I wanted to leave, but like logistically, how? How do you walk out when you have no money, no transportation, and 2 children depending on you? That's not just fear. That was reality. I was so privileged to be able to leave with the help of family. Another thing, safe housing, right? Where do you go? Not everybody has a parent they can stay with, or a sibling or a friend with a spare room, or the money to rent or buy your own place. People say, okay, well then go to shelters. Shelters are full, they're overloaded, they're often unsafe, and even if you can get in, what if you have kids and they don't take kids? What if you have pets and they don't take pets? What if you live in a small town and there isn't one nearby? People say, well, just move to a city with a shelter. Okay, well, you can't always do that for 2 reasons. Money for the move itself, and taking the kids too far away from him, because you're going to get nailed in family court for doing that. And here's another one that people just kind of expect you to like white knuckle through. Trauma fog. You're living in fear every day, walking on eggshells, managing their mood. You're not in your logical brain. You're literally in survival mode. Your nervous system is on fire. You are not making decisions with a clear head. You're making them from fear and guilt or just even numbness. Everything is like smoke and confusion. You're supposed to just find the exit. The confusion, the cognitive dissonance, it makes getting to one clear decision feel absolutely impossible. And I get that not everybody has kids, but if you do have kids, leaving is 10 times harder. Is he going to fight you for custody? Will he use the legal system to keep you tied to him? Will leaving actually make your children less safe? And here's something that pisses people off. Well, men anyway. And it's a fact nonetheless. When women report abuse in family court, they are statistically less likely to get custody, not more. So no, women aren't just handed the kids. If that were true, family court wouldn't be slammed with custody battles and court-appointed visits. What if you come from a family or a culture that believes that divorce is a sin? What if your community would just shame you, exile you, tell you to submit more or pray harder, to forgive? What if everyone around you thinks he is such a great guy? And let's not forget the stigma that comes with being divorced, especially if you're a woman over 40, right? We are fed this patriarchal garbage message that our worth has this expiration date, that we're harder to love, that we should just be grateful that someone chose us. So now it's not just about safety, it's about your identity, your community, your future. So tell me again how easy it is to leave, right? And on top of that, there's the trauma bond. And I'm not gonna get too clinical here in this video, but I want you to understand what's happening in your brain. Abuse often comes in these cycles, right? You get punished and then you get rewarded. It's chaotic, it's confusing, but most importantly, it is addictive. Your brain starts to link love with pain. So you're not just leaving a bad relationship, you're leaving what your brain believes is your only source of relief. It's like trying to quit a drug when your body is still begging for it. There's a reason that trauma bonds often get compared to heroin addictions. Now, none of this is weakness. It's a survival loop that you were conditioned into. You don't even realize, honestly, how small your world has become until someone shows you what freedom looks like. By the time you want to leave, you have been trained to believe that leaving will destroy you. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I should have left sooner, I want to stop you right there, because you stayed for a reason, maybe for too many reasons. You stayed because you were trying to survive. You stayed because your body was scared. You stayed because you were waiting for the right moment, or because you didn't even know what was happening to you. I can't tell you the amount of survivors that I talk to, and I can definitely relate, that stayed because they didn't even know it was abuse. He makes you doubt yourself. Maybe you told yourself that you were too sensitive after years of hearing that message from him, right? If you just worked on yourself harder, it would get better. Maybe you needed to pray more, be more supportive, more loyal, more this, less that. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe you were the problem. You didn't even know you could call it abuse because no one had ever hit you. And even when you're being hit, sometimes it's like, well, he was drunk. Well, there's a reason. You tell yourself you deserved it. That's certainly what they're telling you. You probably knew that something was wrong, but then he'd say you were the problem. And part of you believed it, even if part of you didn't. So you stayed, not because you didn't see the red flags, but because you thought they were yours. None of that makes you foolish. It makes you human. You know who's foolish? The people who say, just leave. Fools, I tell you. Every single survivor of abuse started with that, I would never let a person treat me like that, until you do, until you're in it. And the confidence with which people say that, as if it's easy, it's wild. Maybe you're still in the relationship right now. Maybe you feel guilty because you stayed too long. But it's not because you want to be. It's not because you don't get it. It's because leaving isn't something you can just do today, right? That's real. And that's not a failure. It's just your reality. So what do you do if you're staying for now, right? You're planning to leave, you'd like to leave, but it's just not an option right now. How do you separate emotionally, quietly, safely, right? You don't need his permission to pull back. Stop trying to argue or to convince him because he feeds off of your reaction. Start writing things down quietly to yourself so that when he spins the truth, you have your version. It's not something you're going to show him. It's actually just for you to stay grounded in your reality. Don't show him. I want you to take notice when you start to people please. Make tiny promises to yourself and start keeping them and plan. Now, I know it feels far away, and maybe it is far away, but even thinking about what you might pack or who you could text or where the nearest women's shelter is, that's not nothing. Thinking about how much money you might need or what the next steps might be, even if it's in 5 years from now, that is planning your exit. Sometimes we need a long-term strategy. So if you're staying for now, you're not stuck. You're gathering strength quietly. And when you go, it won't be because somebody told you to. It'll be because you decided. We have got to stop telling women they should just leave or that they should have left. Because that's not just a bad take. It's actually a silencing one. It shuts down the very people who need to be heard the most. If telling people to just leave, your goal is really to help empower them, then we need to make leaving possible. That means making housing safer. That means making courts more survivor informed, talking about trauma bonds so women stop blaming themselves. So if you're really trying to help someone, come at this from the right direction. Shift the culture from why did she stay to what made it so hard to leave. Shift it to what did he do that made it so hard for her? Because even when women do leave, the system often fails them. We face police who ask, why didn't you report it sooner? Doctors who miss the signs, judges who prioritize shared parenting plans over the literal safety of survivors and their children. Courts that completely ignore coercive control because there's no bruise photograph. They tell you to leave to protect your kids. They tell you you'll lose your kids if you don't leave to protect your kids, but then they hand those same kids back to the man who terrorized you. They tell you to call the police, but the police often can't do anything, or he charms them and they leave. They tell you to go to court, but they don't believe your story because you don't have bruises, and that's not justice. That is a rigged game. That's not support. That's betrayal. Leaving is brave, but so is surviving. So if you're still there, if you're stuck, if you feel trapped, you're not broken. You're surviving, and that is no small thing. So before you go, I want you to ask yourself this. If you've ever wondered, why didn't I leave sooner? Can you just do me a personal favor and try asking yourself, what helped me survive that long? Because if this resonated with you and you're starting to see your story in this, then I want you to actually do something. Take this free quiz, instant results, no strings attached. It's called Am I Trauma Bonded? 2 minutes. It might help give you the clarity that you need. You're going to find the link in the description. And if you're looking for support or just more content that really speaks directly to what you've been through, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. You are not alone, and I'm really glad you're here.